today, reports that capital gains tax could rise as high as 39%. What do you make of that?
Hi, morning, Ellie and Stephen. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am staggered. You know what? I don't think Rachel Reeves is stupid. She may be cruel, but I don't think she's stupid. And if she did put this tax up to 39%, she'd be really stupid. And I'll explain why, in my opinion. It's because it might raise a tiny bit of extra money this year, but it would very quickly raise less and less. Investment would become a car crash. We'd receive less money coming into the country, and people who live here would invest less. What happens with capital gains is if you happen to earn a lot of money, you pay income tax, you save a bit, you pay tax on the interest that earns. Then if you want to invest in a friend's business or buy a house to rent out or whatever else, you do that, you pay tax again. When you sell it, you get taxed again on the profit. That's what capital gains tax is. If that goes to 39%, people stop doing that. They stop saving, they stop planning, they stop investing. Or I was talking to my mate Graham last night. He's got a house that he owns that's made a bit of profit. He was going to sell it. He said categorically, if capital gains goes to 39%, he won't sell. So Rachel Reeves won't get a penny off him. So actually, the lower this tax in some ways, the better. It would be a really dumb move.
Well, I mean, that applies to a lot of taxes, though, doesn't it? The idea of flatter taxes actually, people paying less taxes actually increases the revenues to a certain degree. However, how do they balance that out then between, the idea, as you say, that a lot of these taxes actually could stifle growth, stifle the economy, compared to their message which they put out, which a lot of people, of course, buy into, which says, at a time of economic crisis, people with the broadest shoulders have to take the most strain.
Stephen, that message resonates, doesn't it? It makes sense, it sounds sensible, and we all believe in it to some extent. But the truth is, there's a fulcrum point, a balancing point above which you deter. Now, what you can do with tax, with anything, if you have a restaurant and you hike your prices up massively, you will get more money in the next day and the next week. But over the coming weeks, months and years, your customers will completely dry up. They'll go somewhere else and you'll close. And it's about finding that balancing point. And I don't believe for a second that 39% is remotely workable. Across Europe, they have it at something like in the mid-20s, high 20%. In the UK, we've got about 28% for some things, 20% for others. And I think most people are expecting to see this go to about 25, 28%. More than that, we'll categorically see people won't sell stuff, so there'll be no income coming in for the exchequer, and other people won't invest. Be very dumb.
I mean, the reality is, Andy, that Rachel Reeves has her hands tied. Really, she's got very limited options for tax rises because they promised, didn't they, in their run-up to the general election, they ruled out targeting income tax and national insurance. And there's warnings in the papers the past few weeks saying that this targeting of non-doms isn't even going to raise any money because wealthy individuals will just leave Britain.
Ellie, that's spot on. What happened was they were under a lot of pressure and they wanted to look tough to their core support of unions and the far left, as I'll call it. So they talked about taxing the rich, they talked about taxing private schools, they talked about kicking out the non-doms, which always gets a round of applause, but it doesn't ever raise any money, never does. So they boxed themselves into a corner. What would be much easier, instead of the capital gains tax whopping increase, if they put income tax up for the very highest earners, and a couple of measures like that, they'd be unpopular, they'd be a bit painful, but as a temporary measure, that would be much more effective. But they boxed themselves, as you say, into this corner, very stupidly.
Can we just have a look at the Council of Nations and Regions, which Keir Starmer's heading up today? How important is it? Because, let's be honest, most of us aren't overly aware of all of this, but how significant is it that Sue Gray, who was meant to be leading all of this, now isn't there?
Well, Stephen, I don't think this is very important. I'd never heard of this thing. I think you're suggesting you had. We only know about it because of Sue Gray. Sue Gray's become like the most famous woman in the world temporarily. She's like the new Oprah Winfrey or Meghan Markle or something. And that's the issue, isn't it? Everybody is talking about Sue Gray. She has to go. She has to back out of anything to do with government. She's become like a spectre that haunts Keir Starmer. We've been talking about her for 2 years. Was it 2022 when she looked into Partygate and other things? For Keir Starmer, and wherever she goes now, the cameras are going to be there. I'm sure they're outside her house. Her son is an MP now, and I understand that her son was part funded by Lord Ali. So this controversy, this spectre that haunts Keir Starmer, that is Sue Gray, it's not going away. She's going to have to quickly just get out of politics altogether. Otherwise, this story is going to keep going and going and going. But actually, I suppose I have to ask myself, is the story cutting through? You and I are talking about it. We're excited and interested because it's interesting. Do the general public know or care really who Sue Gray is? And I'm not sure, actually.
Now, let's go to the US, because more than 4 million homes and businesses in Florida were left without power yesterday after Hurricane Milton wreaked havoc.
Yeah, the freak weather event being blamed for more than a dozen deaths in Florida. It's thought to have caused tens of billions of dollars of damage.
Well, we're joined now by weather journalist Nathan Rao. Good to see you this morning, Nathan. And we've heard from the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, this morning, saying that Florida's managed to avoid the worst-case scenario. Is that your assessment?
Yes, it is. Hurricane Milton, when it arrived on the west coast of Florida, was looking like it was going to hit as a Category 5 hurricane, and that is the highest category of hurricane, with wind speeds of more than 157 miles per hour. Actually, at that point, Hurricane Milton was packing speeds of 200 mile per hour, wind gusts of 200 miles per hour as it approached the west coast of Florida. And it was on track to move right across the Florida peninsula as a hurricane with its complete integrity intact, right across Florida and back out into the Atlantic. Usually hurricanes die over land because of the friction and because of the lack of warm water that fuels them. This one was on a track to go right across Florida. Now, thankfully, as it reached the west coast of Florida, it downgraded to a Category 3. That's still bad, but it's not as bad as what was anticipated. And the storm surge, which is the huge wall of water that can be dragged along by these things, which was anticipated to be up to 15 feet, that again was much, much lower than anticipated. And of course, sometimes it's the water, it's the flooding, and it's the storm surge that can be more destructive than the winds. That is what we saw with Hurricane Helene only less than a fortnight ago. And in the same region, it moved further north, but the region that caused $250 billion worth of damage and numerous, unfortunately, tragic fatalities. So it was in the same sort of area. But yes, I would agree with that overall, looking back at the cleanup now, thankfully, it wasn't as bad as had been anticipated by some people. Still bad, though. There's a lot of cleanup to happen.
Which is going to take a long time. And as you say, only a couple of weeks after Helene. And of course, we've still got lots of the hurricane season to come, haven't we?
Yes, we have. The hurricane season runs from summer to November. Several weather organisations have been predicting a particularly active hurricane season this year in the Atlantic basin due to a number of reasons. There's a lot of energy in the Atlantic. The ocean waters are higher. We had a calm start to the season, in fact, and it suddenly picked up. And what we've been seeing with these hurricanes, and specifically with Hurricane Milton, is an intense a rapid intensification. There was a clip a couple of days ago which you showed of a meteorologist looking absolutely astonished when he talked about a 50 millibar drop in a matter of hours. That's huge. These warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico and of the Atlantic are causing a really rapid intensification of these things as they move close to the coast of America. And yes, as you say, Stephen, we are going through the hurricane season, or America's going through the hurricane season at the moment. It doesn't end till November. So there are going to be more on the way, yeah.
Good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.